We finally found something that shocks, that radicalizes even us Nazis. And as a shock artist for 10 years, I know just how important that is for getting an idea through someone's skull. Also, it's funny because feminists will be ravenously advocating for Sharia law until you put white in front of it. Clearly they want Sharia law, they're begging for it, and deep down they only want to date their own race, so why not give them just what they want? The stats are there with their porn searches. Their greatest fantasy is to be dominated and raped by a man they trust. So what better man to trust than their loyal provider husband that's assigned to them?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
All memes aside, though, the fact is that we need a form of emergency racial reconstruction, an extreme method in reaction to the insane female liberation that is destroying us today. 2% of white women are of childbearing age. 2% people. 2% of the worldwide population are white women of childbearing age. Can you believe it? If we don't act with immediate force, we will die out. Simple as that. At first I thought I would like white Sharia to be temporary, for it to eventually work its way to being a trad society, in the vein of Victorian, where we don't necessarily have to force our women to marry and breed. But then I realized that trad society is synonymous with white Sharia. No ifs, ands, or buts. Just as boomers can't truly argue for the Constitution without arguing for white nationalism, you can't truly argue for traditionalism without advocating for white Sharia. Weave's article on the subject said it best, and I quote, "Coverture was the reality for all of European history up until the mid and late 19th century. The basic principle of coverture is that the rights of the woman are completely subsumed into that of her husband's. A married woman could not own property, sign legal documents, or enter into a contract, obtain an education against her husband's wishes, or keep a salary for herself. Any restoration of traditional gender roles starts by restoring coverture." End quote. Similarly, a woman was her father's property until she married, then became her husband's. That's how the tradition of the father giving away his daughter at her wedding came about. It's not just a meme, it's literal. So bingo, white Sharia. So if you really want to be trad, I'm sorry, but there's no other way. If you truly want to reinstate patriarchy, you must reinstate all that is fundamentally included. Unless you want some bastardized form of trad like the 1950s, but the Great Demise was already well on its way by then. Kids were being rapidly born out of wedlock. Traditionalism had already been murdered, and it was just a matter of time until the average American family felt it and died out. I'll admit for a while I thought it sounded harsh, but then I'd go on Facebook and see these women with healthy wombs literally wasting all hours of their youth, posting pictures of themselves, and doing absolutely nothing, when at the very least they could be reconstructing the race, and it's absolutely disgusting. If you guys go on Twitter, there's an epidemic of girls turning into twink boys. Yes, twink boys. And by that, they cut their hair really short, put on some glasses, get a lip piercing, and say, "I'm a boy now, I'm boyfriend material." And they really believe this, and it's disgusting. And if you've ever seen of the blue whale suicide cult, there was a good article on the Stormer about that. The young girls are just mutilating themselves with whale pictures and killing themselves for no reason at all. These white women need to be removed from the internet, reprogrammed, and bred until the mind virus is eradicated. Wasting perfectly good wombs, and for absolutely no gains in return. Nothing. 90% have no passion, no goals, no ambitions, nothing. They need to be put to work. And unfortunately, for the female masses, breeding is the only work they'll ever be somewhat decent at. They're killing themselves, drinking themselves to death, and drowning in their own narcissism and so
In my last video, I talked about the exile of magapeds, which are the remnants of the alt-right that were still kicking around in the alt-right movement. And today, I want to talk about the horror of disenfranchisement of women within the alt-right and new right. Now, do I care about whether Tara McCarthy, is allowed to be the Pope of the alt-right? I don't. The alt-right, when it first popped up 2 years ago, they were bound together with the anti-SJW the skeptics. They were bound together by anti-feminism. And it was radical, I guess, compared to the social justice position on feminism. The alt-right was always maybe 5 degrees to the right of the skeptics on anti-feminism. They have gone full Sharia. Just like everything else in the alt-right, they do trial balloons. You see, memes in the alt-right are not harmless jokes. They are trial balloons for people engaging atrocious ideas. So, for example, a lot of people who are anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers in the alt-right now will talk about how they started out as a meme. Cantwell says, Christopher Cantwell from Charlottesville said this the other day, that he started off as a libertarian. A lot of his initiation into the alt-right and Holocaust denial and hatred of the Jews started out as a meme, and then he became increasingly comfortable with the ideas of the JQ. Coverture is a medieval system that still exists in some parts of the third world today, in which a woman is not a sentient being. She is property. She is born the property of her father, and she is bequeathed. She's passed off to her husband, and then she becomes her husband's property. Now, this is a giant leap from when the alt-right first popped up, and their big anti-feminist MRA talking point probably went as far as women shouldn't work, or women should be homemakers, which is a relatively modest proposal, and not even in the Swiftian sense. The domestication of the American white woman has been a standard talking point within Republican conservative circles. But it was like it was of the woman's own accord. Now that the alt-right has tossed away pretense, they're going full tilt boogie with the idea that they want to take shit back. I should have known this when I saw when Faith Goldie came into the alt-right proper. She was dressed up in some medieval wench shit. And I think Lauren Southern had one too. It looks like a meme, but it's not, man. They really are on this Dave's Vault, reclaim the promised land, 15th century Christian woman shit. Like, I thought it was a gag, but yeah. So they started first floating this stuff as like, oh, isn't this funny? Trad life, trad wife. And most people, when they thought about trad life or trad wife in the last year, we're thinking about like a 1950s housewife at the most. That was like the most regressed they could possibly imagine a woman getting set back. Now, and these are like the movement leaders of the alt-right are and a lot of them are women, are proposing white Sharia, which is restoring women to the position of slaves. And one of the person who actually invented the alt-right meme is our good old friend Emily Yukas, Pistachio Girl. She actually created the meme that proposes to turn her into some man's property. She's going to, just like most of the most pronounced characteristic of the alt-right is like some isolated, broken loser wants to make the world pay for their self-loathing. This goes all the way back to Adolf Hitler. But Emily Yukas is a self-loathing miserable, pathetic woman who tells herself that the reason her life is fucked up, and she said this in detail, is that she did not, number one, her dad did not adequately dominate her, and you know, her dad wasn't sufficiently iron-fisted. And then the other one is that she's embracing this fantasy that somehow, if she had married when she was 19 and followed this theoretical virtuous existence that was always bullshit, even when these purity laws exist, always remember something: homosexuality, promiscuity, premarital sex, you know, teenage pregnancy, these things always existed. This idea that some kind of pristine past existed where people were perfect. And, you know, even the 1950s that is so idealized by the alt-right, this sort of golden era of American values, that was horseshit too. All of this like Mad Men culture stuff, it's all a crock of shit. During the Middle Ages, people were just as debauched, maybe not publicly. People were just as promiscuous, maybe not publicly. People were just as fucking queer, probably in general, maybe more so during this medieval era of Christian Renaissance. Just people didn't talk about it. But, you know, going back to this white Sharia thing, it's so funny that what one of the two things that really bound the anti-SJW alliance when it first came out was, number one, anti-feminism. Number two, Islamophobia. And one of the main talking points across from the alt-right to the alt-right was, look how Muslims treat their women. And I always felt, you know, when you listen to some of the stuff from the beginning, you would kind of tell that people like Millennial Woes wanted to go back to the women as cattle system, and he was just kind of, you know, he would meme it off to make it look like it was a joke. They were always sincere, and now the white Sharia meme is catching on like fire. And it is not a joke. It's as insidious as what they want to, you know, look, man, turning a woman into a slave is deeply odious for a bunch of reasons. If you want to see what it's like when a woman is property of her husband, you go to India and look at the rate at which young brides who are basically property of their husbands are beaten, raped, tortured, and murdered. That's coverture. Don't buy this fucking Robin Hood Maid Marian shit about, you know, the king gives the princess away to the valiant knight. That's all a myth. Once you get unpersoned, and the alt-right has a long list of people they want to unperson. They want to unperson black people. They want to unperson Jews. They want to unperson women, including the white women that they claim to want to protect. They're not just talking about restricting freedoms. They're not talking about restoring gender roles. They're talking about turning women into fucking cattle. And the thing about property is that you can do whatever you want with it. So if you want to beat your woman or kill your woman under coverture, that's, if you want to kill your daughter, and this is what sort of echoes most to me about this white Sharia shit. If you want to kill your daughter in the Muslim world, in the fundamentalist Muslim world, extremist Muslim world, if you want to kill your daughter because you feel that she's not adequately pure, that she spoiled herself before you could give her away and get a good price for her, you can do that. And the society will exalt this as protection of women. The beatings are for your own good and all that stuff. This is all very old gender role shit. So when they talk about the white Sharia meme, when they talk about the JQ meme, they don't mean that the joke is a joke. They mean that, here, laugh about this first so that you can get comfortable with it. But I want to see now that the purity spirals are out of control in the alt-right, I want to see which one of these empowered women who has their own brand, their own YouTube channel, they're touring the world as public speakers. I want to see which one volunteers first to become an owned baby factory, for them to literally become the means of production.